We're back with 3 more roguelikes to add to the tier wall, and this week's picks are Patch Quest, Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, and Dead Cells. And there might be some movement of some already existing roguelikes on the wall. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm JammyGiraffe, the English idiot and roguelike addict. We've got 3 games to add back to the tier wall, basically a tier list that can move around, chop and change and adapt with DLCs and patches or updates and expansions in games, plus arguments from you guys. It can all move around. Like I said, we've got 3 games to add, plus some movements to do. But the first game on tonight's agenda is Patch Quest. Patch Quest is a bullet hell adventure-based roguelike with small amounts of base building tied in. It's published by Curve Games and developed by Lightsheet Game Labs. It takes inspiration from Metroidvanias and monster taming games. It's deceptively difficult and fairly kind of genre-defying in a way with its fast-paced gameplay. Firstly, the game is incredibly striking, I think. The art style is really unique. It's really polished, really clean. And the beauty of the game, even with the beauty of the game, it runs flawlessly too. The basic premise is that you're an explorer going into a land that nature's reclaimed to search for treasures and to discover what's going on, and to discover the different animals and nature there. The game has some interesting mechanics, and there's a lot of them. Firstly, all monsters or critters of a certain size in the game can be captured using your lasso, and then you can ride them. You lasso them, and then have to run around them in a circle a number of times, depending on how dangerous that monster is, all without being hit at the same time. Once riding, you do gain their powers, and they level up, so that you start off with 1 power and get a second, a third, and then an ultimate, which can be used with the various bumpers. Now, those powers give you different sort of attacks or defensive moves in some circumstances, or movement skills too. You pick up ammo through fruit on bushes. The different fruit depicts different ammo types. Whether that be shotgun or explosive rounds or rapid fire or burst fire, those kind of things. Now, various treasures can also be found, which will augment future runs. There's also stat bonuses you can pick up to increase how much damage you do with your Nutriblaster gun, which fires nutritious food to make the monsters sleepy and tame them, not kill them, but, they can believe what they want to believe. They're killing them. Then there are, after the kind of stat bonuses that you get, you will come across, different totems that might say, do you want to trade one of your stats for another, so that you can kind of build around a particular playstyle. Plus, because you're adventuring into a new land, of course, you need a base camp, and that base camp can be kind of augmented. It's augmented by, during the run, you can stamp or pin certain plants or objects that you find, which gives you the ability to then put that in your base. And the different things that you pin give you different buffs, or they give you, for instance, the fruit bushes that give you ammo types. You could take those back, and then you've got that type of ammo at the start of the next run. So you can kind of change your base a little bit to play to your playstyle, but I think overall it doesn't make a huge difference. And at the start of the game, you only have 1 path to go down, 1 biome that you can go into to explore. And once you sort of make your way through that biome, you can unlock one of 3 other paths, so 4 in total, which is where the kind of Metroidvania inspiration kind of comes in. And don't get me wrong, there are many different things you can find along the way, from different treasures and different boss fights, which the boss fights are really good. They really double down on the bullet hell moments. Think of the game kind of as a Binding of Isaac mixed with a little Pokemon in there, and very much a different tone to the game than Binding of Isaac. Far more upbeat, let's say. But as I said earlier, the game is deceptively difficult. It really ramps up. It's going to be a hard one to place on the wall. So looking at the wall, looking at the state of it now, I think this game has a lot of merits. It's beautiful. It has a great soundtrack, which I didn't mention. The soundtrack's really, really good in this, and the sound effects are good too. But when I compare it to others on this page, on this wall, it does need to be a little lower than most. Now, the main reason is because there's only so much you can do to kind of change your runs. You just kind of get into a bit of a habit of going for the same kind of ammo type or the same particular monsters because of the way they work. It's incredibly enjoyable. So I think for me, I want to put this on a level par or slightly above Monster Train. Now, I've probably put more hours into Monster Train than I have this, but I feel that this tried to go a different way. It's called Patch Quest because of the different patches on the land that you go around. That's not particularly different. That's like Binding of Isaac. But the idea of riding monsters and have to capture those, I haven't seen the game kind of do that really. So I think I'm going to put it right on the line between uncommon and rare. Now, in doing that, I do think I need to bump up Darkest Dungeon potentially. And I know there's been some arguments in the chat about that, so maybe this is considered for next video. We shall see. But for now, let's move on to Dungeon and Degenerate Gamblers, or Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers, I should say. Last week, we talked about Balatro, a roguelike poker game. Well, this is a roguelike blackjack game, which only recently came out on the 8th of August, but it gripped me, it interested me. It's developed by Purple Moss Collectors, and published by Yogcast Games. Much like Balatro, this is a deck builder where you start by selecting a deck, which in this circumstance is just a suit. So you get ace to king of the same suit, whether that's, clubs, hearts, diamonds, or spades. The suit gives you a different benefit when you get blackjack or max score, because blackjack isn't always, max score isn't always 21 in this game. Now, hearts heal you, clubs give you double damage, spades give you shield, diamonds give you chips or money, basically. In the game, you're traveling through different areas, going through taverns and pubs or basements, various areas, and there is a kind of a story to it through the people you meet. You have to sort of progress through. I think the script in this is really good. There's some comedy to it, and I'm a sucker for the pixel art, but that's just me. I love some pixel art. The game is very difficult. I believe the game kind of suffers due to the high amount of RNG needed to win. Each turn, you're choosing to hit or stand like you would in blackjack, right? And when you hit, a card is drawn from your deck, and it's immediately played, which you would expect, right? But because obviously, let's give an example that you're trying to hit 21, you've augmented your deck a little bit, and let's say you've put a load of cards in there that actually value 21. So they don't value 10, you've got cards that actually value 21, so they'd give you blackjack. But let's say you've just drawn a 2, and you've got a bunch of 21s, you can really screw yourself over very quickly. Now, yes, you might say, well, you need to build your deck in a specific way. I agree, but I think there needs to be more flexibility in how you do that early on. Late on in the game, you can ramp up and kind of break the game in a way in its current state. But I do think the early game is incredibly difficult. To get an understanding for how this works, so when you're up against your opponent, you're obviously trying to get as close to 21 as possible without going over. Let's say they stand on 17 and you stand on 18. The difference is 1, you do 1 damage to them. If they go bust, they have 0, so you do 18 damage. And similarly, if you go bust, they would do the damage to you. The different people you fight will stand at different levels, and they have different cards that would affect them. But during the run, yes, you can add specific cards to your deck, but the game kind of opens up when you're adding cards to your hand. So you have a hand as well. Now, you have to have something called advantage to be able to play those cards from your hand, but you gain advantage from basically a passive that you choose at the start, whether that be when you take damage, you gain advantage, something like that, to be able to play the cards that are in your hand. And the cards in your hand are where you can actually affect what's going on, whereas you really can't otherwise. The RNG is too heavy in it. Now, the cards that you can play from your hand have various different effects, from being able to make them stand, the opponent stand on whatever they're on, being able to swap cards with them, being able to do direct damage, being able to heal, various different things. And you really have to read them because they are very complicated at first. I mean, for lovers of deck builders, I'm sure you'll get your head around it quite quickly, but it takes some time. And again, for lovers of deck builders, the cards in here have various artwork inspired by a lot of other deck builders. Slay the Spire, Hearthstone, to name a few, which is great. I love to see it. But again, the issue I have for this game is the heavy reliance on RNG. And I know there's RNG in all roguelikes, okay? But this just has a heavy reliance on it. Now, the game only came out on the 8th of August, so I'm sure tweaks are going to be made. But right now, as of this recording, there hasn't been any major patch just yet. I think it needs a little bit of work, but it's got some real potential there. There's so many different things you can do to try and change your deck. It's just not very balanced at the moment, in my opinion. So it is worth checking out, don't get me wrong. Particularly if you're a fan of deck builders, you'll get some laughs out of it, and there's a lot of Easter eggs in there with the various cards as well. But I do think I'm going to have to put this on the lower end of the scale, at least for now. I can see this going up if they do the right patches. But in all good conscience, I can't put this above Monster Train right now. So, but there's a lot of potential there. You know, the music's great. We actually had the composer of some of the music join into the Twitch chat, which was nuts on day one. And the music is great, but the game needs some tweaks for sure. So for now, I'm going to put this just probably just above the line onto uncommon for now. But we'll see. Keep an eye on this one. Finally, let's move on to Dead Cells. Now, those of you that are more hardcore roguelike fanatics will probably know of Dead Cells. It's a far more classic roguelike to that of Patch Quest and Dungeons and Degenerate Gamblers. Developed and published by Motion Twin. This is a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania inspired kind of action platformer, if you like. Over the years, it has had many DLCs and updates, some paid for, some free. They actually just did the very final patch they're doing, the 35th free patch, as they've said. It's even had a collaboration directly with Castlevania. It's well known and well loved. You play as a failed alchemic experiment, trying to figure out what's happening on a kind of ever-changing cursed island. You're immortal, but you're crippled, so you can only take over bodies in order to move and explore. And the game, like I said, kind of inspired the term Roguevania. It was the first true Roguevania out there, if that is a term you like. The world has many biomes and different floors to explore, having to battle through them to unlock as you go. During the runs, you collect cells to unlock different weapons and equipment and passives and upgrades and cosmetics. It's so fast-paced, but there's such a skill to playing this game compared to some other roguelikes. There's a real skill and reward factor from being good at this. The combat's so responsive, but challenging at times as well. The game does have kind of a huge amount of unlocks, as you'd expect for a game that's been around for 6 years. And it has many Easter eggs in amongst the beautiful world. There's a good comedy to it. There's some really good scripting to it as well. And as you progress, you basically have 2 weapons and 2 items, as well as you can put something in your backpack, plus the health potions. And all equipment has or ties into 3 key stats that feed into being able to scale your abilities. So you've got red for brutality, purple for tactics, and green for survival. When getting these upgrades, you get the choice of, okay, I want to put brutality from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3. And as you do that, your weapons will adapt and increase, but also your health will change. So if you heavily go into one of them, so let's say you've got 5 brutality, 1 tactics, 1 survival, the next time you then put something into survival, you'll get much more of a bonus from it, so you get diminishing returns from its scaling. When you're getting these upgrades as well, you'll notice that different weapons are tied to one of those stats. So it might be half brutality and half tactics, or it might just be brutality. That's an example. It's an absolutely beautiful game. Again, I'm a sucker for some pixel art, but there's some love and care and attention that's gone into this. The polish of this is huge because it's just so responsive. You never have a problem with this game. Has some really fun Twitch integration as well, if you're someone that likes to stream, that can be affected by your community. And like I said, the writing's really funny, the animation's beautiful, the soundtrack's great, the game's responsive. You can probably tell where I'm going with this. It's brilliant. Honestly, it's one of the roguelikes I would always recommend first, as it's easy to play but kind of hard to master. So in terms of its position on this board, I think it's on a level par with a fair few of these titles at the high end. It definitely fits around the kind of epic legendary line for me, possibly right on the line. So I'm going to do this, just place it here for now. But some of you might be saying, how can you put this above Binding of Isaac? Well, move on for a moment to the final segment of today, which is movements. I've been reading your comments, and there's been a few about Isaac and where I put Isaac. And look, Isaac is close to my heart. I love the Blumen game, I really do. And there's been some good points from you all. Some good points, some not so well thought out points. But to highlight a particular person, a normal guy 8407, who says, I would argue that despite Isaac not really being my favourite roguelike, it deserves legendary status because it truly encapsulates what a roguelike is about. Firstly, I do agree with that. If something's going to be legendary, it needs to encapsulate what it's about, and this does. It says a lot of roguelikes try to have many different items that make different builds and such, but Isaac has many items that synergize in the most unexpected ways, and many items that actually change the way you play and approach a game. 100% agree with this. Goes on to say later on that it has many options, decisions that you have to make. Do you clear room for a chance on a certain consumable? Do you sacrifice health for a chance on the angel's room? Do you use your bomb for extra coins on a dead body, or to find a secret room? There is a lot of ticks in Binding of Isaac, and I think I did underrate it. I think I was trying to be maybe a little too strict with what I put into legendary, but Isaac belongs there. So I'm going to move it up, moving it up into the legendary spot, because I do think the slight rejig is needed, because Isaac being in the legendary zone, then Dead Cells right on the line between legendary and epic, and Enter the Gungeon in epic, feels like those 3 games in particular sit in the right order. Now I know people are then going to look at, how can you say Balatro is on par? I believe it is. I believe that Balatro will be a legendary game in the roguelike world, so I'm leaving that where it is for now. So I'm going to wrap it up there. They are the 3 roguelikes added to the Roguelike Tier Wall today, and a little movement as well. If you've made it this far, thank you ever so much. Please drop a like, subscribe, and more importantly, please comment. Tell me what you agree and disagree with, and maybe movements can be made. We'll see. Also, please recommend any roguelikes that you think I should be reviewing. Don't get me wrong, I've got a long list that I'm going through, as you can expect. And I'm also working on another tier wall for a different genre of games, so please watch this space. It will be out in due course. There'll be another video next Wednesday that will come out at the same time. Please also come join us on Twitch. I stream on Tuesdays and Fridays. Check us out on the Discord. Check all my socials. Much appreciated. And look after yourselves. Keep with the positive vibes. Jammy out.